La computer laptop. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Olusegun, you can hear me? All else can hear me?
Good morning, Prof.
Hey, okay, how now?
I'm fine, thank you, Prof.
I hail your government.
No. Well done. I was having challenges signing in. I had to call Professor Dorrington.
Yeah, actually, I also had some challenges.
Okay.
Yeah.
Glad to know that it wasn't isolated.
Yeah. So
how's everything going? How are you doing, Prof? You look great.
Well, let's hope so. We're still waiting for some people to join in.
Right.
But Matthew, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you now. I can hear you.
Okay.
Shagun, are you there?
Sure, I'm here.
Okay, great. We're just waiting. Yeah, we're just waiting for Sakwe.
I think it's here. It's connecting to.
It's trying to sign in. Oh, I think he's signed in already. Osakwe, can you hear me? Oh. It's still trying to sign in. Just let's wait for one more minute and see if he gets in, and then we can continue, right? Okay, hello.
Okome.
Alpha.
I bring you peace, man. Osakwe is still trying to join you. Chijoke, how are you?
I'm fine, Prof.
Yeah, he's still
good
trying
morning,
to join in.
Yeah, good morning, yeah.
Let me see if it looks like he sent a message or something. Okay. Oh, no, it's not him. So he has joined in. Okay. Osakwe, can you hear me?
Yes. Good morning, Prof.
How you doing?
I know if you complain, oh.
I beg, not complain today.
Okay, it's good to see you, sir.
Let's begin because we have just 1 hour, 30 minutes. So we must run through this as quickly as possible. But just a very brief preamble to this discussion. And I'm going to make it brief so we can go right into the meat of the matter here. So I welcome you all to the second in the two-part series honoring our professor, the only professor, Professor Hyginus Ekwuazi. This is a celebration of a scholar, teacher, and friend to many.
Professor Kome, I'm not the only professor.
Well.
Let's keep the record. Let's keep the record straight. Now go.
Yes, but that has to be signed in from one of your students. And so if I say that, I should be held responsible, not you. So this is Professor Ekwuazi is my friend, mentor, teacher, confidant, and over the years I've been closely related to him in many respect. And I'm glad to share this occasion for all the other scholars who are here. His humanity is huge, and I'm grateful that I've met him, and I'm also grateful that I've kept tabs with him all over the years. I should add quickly that although we're celebrating him today as a teacher, scholar, it is important for me to add that he is also a poet. And for those of you who will want to go into that aspect of his life, please pay attention, as you will find a very plain connection between his poetry and that of Christopher Okigbo. I have been very, very entertained and edified by reading his poems. Now let's turn to what he's universally known for. And even if it tells me not to use the word universally known for, I will insist that I will use it. And I will insist that I want to be held responsible for this also. We have 5 discussants here: Chijioke, Matthew, Tolulope, Osakwe, and Olusegun. I suggest that we do 10 minutes each, and so that we have enough time to take question and answer as we go, answers as we get along, and which means that we have less than 40 minutes. But I think that that will just do us well. We will take the discussion as it is on the program, beginning with Chijioke, Matthew, Tolulope, Osakwe, and Shoeton in that order. And now I'm very happy to announce that it is the turn of Chijioke to speak to us. Chijioke. Is Chijioke in the house?
I think he has some issues with his network. He's just move to the next one.
Okay, so let's go to the next person. As soon as he connects, we'll come back to him. So Matthew Brown, can you take it up?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah,
I can.
thanks. Thank
Matthew,
you,
good to see you.
Professor Okome. Prof, it's good to see you too.
Good to see you,
in fact,
Matthew.
it's a great honor to be here to have this opportunity to discuss you and your work today, right to your face. But I'm honored and humbled to be asked to be part of this panel. I'll jump right in so I don't exceed my 10 minutes. And I hope we have more time to catch up afterwards. As part of preparing my remarks for today, I actually turned to ChatGPT for some help, not because I'm as lazy as my students, but rather because I have seen this done recently and I wanted to try it out in relation to our esteemed celebrant, Professor Ekwuazi. Indeed, if I were as lazy as my students, I would have been in very deep trouble. For when I asked the simple question of the AI, who is Hyginus Ekwuazi, it responded with the following. Hyginus Ekwuazi is a Nigerian filmmaker, writer, and academic. He was born in Nigeria and has made notable contributions to the Nigerian film industry known as Nollywood. Ekwuazi has written and directed several films and has also worked as a film critic and scholar. He has taught film and literature at various universities in Nigeria, including the University of Ibadan. So far, this isn't too bad, although the idea that Prof is known primarily as a filmmaker, I think would surprise most of us. But the AI went on to say that Ekwuazi's films often explore social and political issues in Nigeria, reflecting his keen interest in the cultural and historical context of the country. Some of his notable works include Igweonu, 2009, My Father's Son, 2010, and Light and Darkness, 2017. His films have been recognized and screened at film festivals both in Nigeria and internationally. So wherever these incredible films by Professor Ekwuazi are, I must get copies as soon as possible. By the way, I should note that ChatGPT put the titles of the films in quotation marks rather than italics, so 10 points off. The final paragraph of the AI's response reads as follows. As a scholar, Ekwuazi has written academic articles and essays on African cinema and Nollywood. While his contributions may not be as widely recognized as some other scholars in the field, he has made valuable contributions to the understanding and appreciation of Nigerian cinema through his films and academic work. This last part is, of course, a total failure, because as our gathering here today attests, Professor Ekwuazi's contributions to African cinema and Nollywood scholarship are widely recognized. Perhaps the global capitalist publishing industry and Google's algorithms are less capable of registering his many contributions, the way that they can register contributions made by scholars with the privilege of being published by University of Chicago Press, Duke, and so on. Here, I'm of course implicating myself. Nevertheless, those of us who are serious about the history of Nigerian screen media cannot deny the incredible contributions of Hyginus Ekwuazi, even though, as I will illustrate shortly, many of us could do a much better job of making his preeminent place in our field known. In the remainder of my remarks, I want to sketch a very brief and arbitrary survey of some of the ways that I think Professor Ekwuazi has contributed to Nigerian and African screen media studies, looking at two key conceptual paradigms, industry analysis and the reading of audiovisual modalities. I will conclude with some personal reflections on his mentorship and the joys of having worked with him in small ways here and there for the past 13 years. Industry analysis in the study it that way. Among those scholars who do industry analyses of Nollywood, among which I do not really count myself as an industry analyst, and who publish in global journals, the best presses, etc., there's a strikingly unfortunate dearth of citations of film in Nigeria. Alexander Budd, for example, who's a fantastic scholar, and Jade Miller too, are both known as leading scholars of the industrial practices in Nollywood, yet I found no citations of Ekwuazi in Budd's publications and only one of Miller in Nollywood Central, and it's not film in Nigeria that she cites. Of course, one could argue that once the video film industry took hold, the filmmaking context Ekwuazi studied for film in Nigeria was no longer relevant. But as my recent book, Indirect Subjects, has attempted to show, Nollywood should be seen as a continuation of certain Nigerian filmmaking practices and modes of address rather than a major break. Speaking of modes of address, the second major contribution Professor Ekwuazi has made to Nigerian screen media analysis, at least from my perspective, concerns his very astute readings of audiovisual modalities. This is of special interest to me because I've spent a great deal of time in my own research analyzing the modes by which Nollywood addresses its publics. Here, I think I should apologize for not citing Prof more often myself. While film in Nigeria is certainly in the bibliography of my book, I could have paid greater due to Prof's insights about how to read Nigerian cinema. Let me mention just two brief examples. The first comes from Prof's reading of Kongi's Harvest in film in Nigeria. Whereas Nollywood has the ability to create decidedly local forms of address, Ekwuazi notes that Ossie Davies' Kongi's Harvest, the camera work, the acting, and even the inclusion of Davies' commentator character suggests that the film has a clear foreign mode of address, which theorizes a non-Nigerian predilection for voyeuristically attending to an exaggeratedly venile version of corruption in African politics, and then invites that audience to slake its thirst. Turning to Nollywood, Ekwuazi's analysis of the cult of personality in Igbo films is built on a very astute reading of soliloquy, not as monologic, but as a dialogue with one's chi. This insight, of course, comes from Prof's contribution to Jonathan Haynes' edited volume, Nigerian Video Films, which, as I understand it, was another building block among many that formed a very long and close friendship between Ekwuazi and Haynes. And so it's to friendship that I would like to turn with my remaining minutes. I came to know Professor Ekwuazi when I was doing my dissertation research in 2010. He was then HOD of Theater Arts at UI. I merely wanted to build strong institutional connections. Little did I know that I would come to think of the Theater Arts HOD as a mentor and later a friend. Prof invited me to submit an article for the Ibadan Journal of Theater Arts, and we met fairly regularly to discuss my work over the course of that year that I spent at UI. A short time later, while still a graduate student, another institutional connection with whom I had forged a bond, Kian Thomaselli at the University of KwaZulu-Natal in Durban, South Africa, He invited me to organize a conference panel on Nollywood audiences, especially those audiences who watched, in those days at least, on DSTV's Africa Magic channels. Eventually, those panel presentations would become a special issue of the Journal of African Cinemas. I asked Prof if he would like to contribute, and indeed he made perhaps the most important contribution of all. His article, which he flew to South Africa to present and later published in the journal, is one of the best pieces of scholarship I know of about how and why audiences in Nigeria turn on televisions and watch locally made film. It includes a great deal of data, but also keen analyses of the storytelling conventions that seem to connect with audiences. I highly recommend it. In fact, his article is proof that in addition to industry analysis and keen readings of films, Professor Ekwuazi is also a great student of the conversation that takes place between films and their spectators. That conference allowed Professor Ekwuazi and I to get to know each other a little better. And I, for one, found the whole thing to be rather awkward, actually. I was inviting my mentor into a project and even editing my mentor's work, which felt really strange at the time and is still strange to think about. But through it all, Prof was exceptionally kind, generous, easygoing, and graceful. And that, I would say, is true of him all the time, as far as I can tell. One last thing I would like to mention is that, as we all know, Prof is also, and Okome just mentioned it, a poet and a novelist. And I did not know about his fiction until just 1 year ago, when I had the misfortune of falling ill in Ibadan and enjoying the creature comforts of UCH for a week. Prof visited me twice, even though he was busy shuttling back and forth between Ibadan and Lekki. He was as kind, generous, easygoing, and graceful during those visits as ever, and he gifted me a copy of his novel, I've Miles to Walk Before I Sleep, which was just the kind of sweet and lovely story that I needed at that time. ChatGPT may think that Prof is an accomplished filmmaker. Whether that is true now or perhaps in the future, I can certainly imagine a very good film adaptation of I've Miles to Walk Before I Sleep. Here's to Professor Ekwuazi and all of the kind, generous, easygoing, and graceful work he has done in the past, and all he will certainly do in the future. It's been my absolute pleasure and honor to recognize him as part of this panel today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Matthew, thanks a whole lot. Actually, the AI is not very, very wrong, actually. Professor Ekwuazi did the first major documentary film on Nollywood, which is something we don't talk about at all, but I have a copy of that. While he was at the Nigerian Film School Institute. But we don't talk about that because it's not popularly circulated. If Chijioke is ready, we can take him now. Chijioke, are you ready? Is Chijioke ready?
Not yet. Not yet, sir.
Not yet. Okay. Let's move on then to Tolulokpe. It's your floor. It's
Thank
not
you,
your
sir.
business.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Ekimesa.
Anomiao, good morning.
Thank you, sir. It's such a privilege to be here, though you are not directly my lecturer or my supervisor, but directly again and indirectly, you have mentored me, and through your publications, I've been able to have a very solid background. I can boldly say that through the publications of yourself, Professor Okome, and Jonathan Haynes, I've been able to really build my foundation, because I am not coming from theater and I'm not coming from a film background. I'm actually coming from linguistics background. Here I am. My PhD is on film studies, and I can really say that a lot because of your publication. So I must first say thank you, God bless you, sir. So I don't really have much to say because of the kind of relationship I have and I don't have with you. But the little I have to say, I got to know that you are from the English studies background. You have a BA in English and then theater arts for your MA, and I believe this shaped your background in media studies. and your specialty in media study led you into exploring world of film. And we can obviously see that you are undoubtedly a strong voice, both in Nigerian and African cinema. What I've read from so far, my experience in film studies. And from different perspectives that I've read, that I've listened to different people, especially Niji Akoni, I realized that aside your prowess in media studies, you are known to majority as a welfareist, and you care about the welfare of people around you. That's, I must say, I really envy about you. You care so much. People say a lot, and I joined the previous panel, and almost everybody said the same thing about you being a welfareist, that you care so much about people around. And while some describe you as a generous person with your time, some believe that you're also generous with your resources. And also, mostly, you are referred to as a pathfinder, a wave paver, a poet, a novelist, a dramatist, a thorough researcher. These are really things that we cannot just overlook about your scholarship. And also different scholarly perspective. You're a great a polyglot, a wordsmith, and many more. And then I was going through an interview, and I saw that while speaking about you, as Professor Okome says, you are a rallying point of Ibadan School of Media and Communication Studies. And then Professor Haynes also described you as the Dean of Nigerian Film Scholar. This really means a lot. Not knowing so much about you and going through things and seeing this, with all the things I've read, that I built my thesis on, I must say, Prof, you have done so great. From the perspective of those who have encountered you closely, like Professor Kaku and Professor Okome, who happens to be your student, it confirms that you are one of the most exponential voices of the media arts studies in Nigeria. And due to your exposure in University of Penn, and how you earn your credits in Temple University and Broad Street, these are the things that I read that I really feel that, okay, if nobody has mentioned, I just have to just say something about it. All Professor Okaku's observation, that you come with the wholeness and background to impact television and film as an emerging discipline, and that you are at the center of the connectivity between the media study and mass communication in the Ibadan media arts, because you brought to bear a certain glamour and certain seriousness, a certain degree of scholarship to the area. In virtually every media school here today, there is nowhere you will not find a student or two of Professor Ekwuazi. And this is really a lot. And well, you also brought glamour and intellectualism to bear on the film discourse in Nigeria and Nigerian landscape. I read that your tutelage from the school days helped in shaping your writing skill, which was why you won several prizes. And also, it is evident through the academic conferences. I realized that there was a particular conference, Media Studies in Nigeria, Genesis and Detour, that was organized by your students. This is not something we just come by anyhow. We don't just organize a conference. That person was really worth it. And I must say, this is really huge also. And from your publications, just like I said before, I've been able to gain a lot. I've been able to really put my feet down in film studies. And that's really, I owe you a lot for that. I really owe you a huge thank you for giving so much to academics, for giving so much to, especially those of us that we are not from the theater background or film background. You have really shaped, you have used your publications to really help shape our perspective of Nigerian films, perspective of, for us to really understand what the academic, the scholarship is all about. When you want to go into films, what to look out for, when you want to analyze a film, things you have to really look into to analyze the film and get it right. This is not, I didn't attend any class for that, but your publications really pushed me into understanding a lot. And I must say, Prof, Odimuma, sir, thank you very much. God bless you. God bless you, sir.
Thank
Very
you
much, Tolu. Thank you.
Thank you, Tolu. Thank you very much. Chijioke, if you're ready, can we take you if you're ready?
Okay.
Are you ready? Oh.
Yeah, issue.
Okay. So can we then take Osakwe?
Okay. I don't know if I can share my screen. Hello, Prof. Okay, thank you.
Of course you can.
Let me share my screen.
I think it's only the host that can grant you access, Osakwe.
No,
Okay.
Oh, he can?
Yes, it can.
Okay.
Okay. I'm trying to. Okay. It appears it could be the host. Let me just speak. Good afternoon, Professor Ekwuazi, Professor Kume, and everyone on this panel. I'm delighted and to be invited to make a reflection on Professor Ekwuazi. Well, I titled my reflection, Hyginus Ozomena Ekwuazi, an inimitable African film and media scholar and métier. Professor Ekwuazi, my first encounter with Professor Ekwuazi was at the University of Benin. During my BA project defense. Ekwuazi is one of my most inspiring teachers and mentors in a field that I've come to embrace as a career, carving a niche for myself because of the shoulder people like him have warmly provided me and many others. Ekwuazi is a noble and great personality whose character and lifestyle qualify for all the kind and complimentary words that could be spoken of a person without making the speaker a liar or a flatterer. He is a retired professor of film and broadcasting in the Department of Theatre Arts, University of Ibadan, Nigeria, but he is not a tired scholar. He is the current Vice Chancellor and Chief Executive Officer of Dominican University, Ibadan. In this presentation, I want to focus on my relationship with this urbane Prague academic. I hope the trajectory of my short talk will inspire some of us here to continue to knock at the gates of success in our vocations despite man-made restrictions or roadblocks, including some that may be self-imposed by way of one's inability to extend oneself in a world that has increasingly become very competitive in virtually all spheres of human endeavors. I hope too that this presentation will discourse some people about the person of Professor Hyginus Ekwuazi In reflecting on my relationship with Hyginus Ekwuazi, I would like to look at it, however, elliptically from the perspective of being a human resources and capacity builder, an institution builder, a film and media entrepreneur, a never say die academic soldier, and a fine family man. It is given that I will be essentially historical analytic in my presentation. I recall with nostalgia my first physical meeting with Professor Hyginus Ekwuazi. It was at the tail end of the 1996-1997 academic section at the famous theater hall at Ekwuazi campus of the University of Benin, Benin City. The event was the project defense for the graduating students. He was the then external examiner for the BA program in the Department of Theatre Arts. He came across as a suave, smart, highly cerebral, compassionate, and industry and academia-focused person. I had earlier encountered him through his path-breaking book, Film in Nigeria, which for many scholars of my generation was considered the Bible of film studies in Nigeria. I also encountered him via his experimental play, A Temple Made of Clay, which was a delightful reading. So meeting him was a dream fulfilled for me. But that physical meeting with his larger than life portfolio in film and media scholarship was a great fillip for my academic journey that has brought me to where I am today. When Professor Said Aderinto reached out to me to be part of the panel to reflect on Hyginus Ekwuazi, my mind flashed back to that very inspiring words wrote on my BA project titled Advertising and the Logic of Creativity, a Consideration of the Copywriter's Role. Ekwuazi wrote, "You so obviously have all it takes to confront the world on your own terms, Osakwe. Those marbles have remained in my heart to this day. Prof, I thank you. God bless you. God keep you."
Thank you very much.
Ekwuazi availed me with his contacts and books and words of encouragement to pick up a career in academics. Although he was an expert affiliated with the University of Ibadan, he was seconded to the National Film Corporation, where he served successfully as the pioneer consulting director of the National Film Institute, and eventually the managing director and director general of the National Film Corporation. He worked tirelessly for the recognition of film as a field of academic study in Nigeria. If I may ask, even though I know you all know it, what makes a scholar? Who is a martyr? The word scholar literally refers to a person of learning, and learning, as we know, never stops. A true scholar possesses a healthy dose of humility and a keen awareness of his or her limits and areas of improvement. Métier, on the other hand, from French, is a person's work, especially when they have a natural skill or ability for it. Ekwuazi is both a passionate scholar and a métier rolled into one as far as film and media scholarship is concerned in Africa and beyond. A qualified filmmaker and theater icon of no mean repute of many years standing, Professor Hyginus Ekwuazi received the British Council Fellowship for Film Studies, University of London, in 1989. University of Ibadan Postgraduate Scholarship Award 1980, a fellow of the prestigious Salzburg Film Seminar, Session 314, and the Institute of Corporate Administrators of Nigeria. As a consummate scholar, HOEO, with the permission of Professor Okome, as he is fondly and popularly called, holds a PhD Theatre Arts Specialization Film degree in 1984, MA Theatre Arts Specialization Media Arts, Film and Television, degree 1981, and BA English honors degree, second class upper 1978. In addition, HOEO is a member of the African Council for Communication Education and the Association of Nigerian Authors. He is also a leading member of the Society of Nigerian Theatre Artists, who has traversed the length and breadth of Nigeria and beyond with food for the mind, burnished with knowledge, adorned with the spices of experience, time, and academic excellence he has acquired over 4 decades. With the support of the relevant government agencies and persons like Brenda Shew, he built the National Film Institute from scratch to what it is currently. It is not surprising that this capacity builder was appointed the DG of the National Film Corporation after his 2 tenure at the National Film Institute. He went ahead to design the course structure and academic calendar for the degree and professional programs at the National Film Institute. He facilitated the diploma and BA Tech film programs in conjunction with the Abubakar Tafawa Balewa University, Bauchi. Ekwuazi redefined the mission and refocused the vision of the National Film Corporation in line with statutory functions, the broad economic policies laid down by the federal government from time to time, and the highly mercurial demand of the fast-evolving Nollywood industry. He evolved a management structure responsive to the redefined mission and refocused vision of the corporation, and diversifies NFC's sources of funding. He also successfully packaged the second National Film Festival in 2003. We can easily see that the generational impact of Ekwuazi in the film and media firmament is huge, as many more scholars and practitioners have either passed through him or used the institutions he envisioned or built to achieve their lifelong goals of being film and media scholars, film and media entrepreneurs, Nollywood content creators, among others and beyond. His craftsmanship and intellectual fecundity have led him to publish elegantly witty works in the forms of drama, prose, and poetry. This platform will not be enough for us to exhaust that, many of which have earned him national and international accolades, awards, and prizes. Some of these include a letter of commendation from the Vice President, Federal Republic of Nigeria, for the role as producer of the compilation of documentary on Shehu Musa Yaradua 2000, a Gold Plaque Award for his role as a multimedia consultant to Shogun, the Commonwealth Heads of States meeting Abuja, Nigeria 2003, Association of Nigeria Author Anna Kadri Poetry Prize 2007, and the Nigerian and NDDC Gabriel Okara Poetry Prize 2007. There are so many. The prodigious nature of his academic publications can only be peered into when one Google his name against film and media studies in Africa. Matthew made reference to that earlier. He has also chaired several film festivals and award ceremonies, including the African Movie and Movie Academy Awards. Professor Ekwuazi, as we've said, is highly cerebral, outstandingly humane, exemplarily generous, and extremely humble. With an ardent love for teaching, for which his prodigious skills underscore his natural endowments, Ekwuazi robustly extends his passion for teaching and academic consultancies to other Nigerian universities beyond the confines of Ibadan or the Dominican University, where he has served and continues to serve in many cases as a standard examiner, adjudicator, adjunct professor, supervisor, as the case may be. I want to say, lastly, that Hyginus Ekwuazi is a born teacher who is blessed with the wife of his youth and beautiful children and grandchildren. Congratulations, sir. He is a family man with a Catholic sense of responsibility. He is an honest and enlightened colossus, a worthy and fine gentleman popularly known by his brothers, sisters, and friends and students as the man that brings people peace. He is the man with the academic elephantitis. Don't ask me what it means, he will answer by himself. Whose outstanding intelligence and humane personality have endeared many to him in Nigeria and in Africa. By the grace of God, he is a good man. In a very concrete sense, therefore, I see Hyginus Ekwuazi, despite human frailties, which all of us are prone to, as a man with balanced doses of the requisite intelligence quotient, IQ, emotional quotient, EQ, social quotient, SQ, executive quotient, EXQ, spiritual quotient, SPQ, and capacity quotient, which must be celebrated and celebrated for the expansion of knowledge and the improvement of the human condition in Africa and the world generally. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Osakwe.
Prof, I'm back. Chijok is back. My network logged me out completely. My sincere apologies. I've been struggling to get back. I had to do multiple maneuvers. Yes.
Make your presentation.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. So, good morning, everyone, and my apologies again. It was my system that logged. I'm honored to be part of this effort to reflect on Professor Ekwuazi's critical contributions to the development of African film, as well as to think about the ways that he or we bring his scholarship and engagement with the film industry to bear on the growth of the field of film studies in Nigerian universities. It will amount, obviously, to stating what we all know. For me to say that no discussion, or for anyone at all to say that no discussion on the scholarship of film in Nigeria and the Nigerian film would be complete without a substantial reference to Professor Ekwuazi, whose works count among the earliest to inaugurate and define the discursive landscape of film studies in Nigerian universities. So it is fitting that LSA has this year dedicated 2 panels to honor this pioneer whose varied contributions traverse multiple categories. From teaching and academic administration to research and writing, curriculum development, mentorship, corporate engagement, service to and engagement with industry, and a myriad of other contributions to the study and practice of film in Nigeria and beyond. I don't want to go into the details of listing, the many places Prof has taught and the many works he's done and all of that. We know those ones, but just reflecting on those, part of the most significant elements of this consideration and this reflection is the awareness that within the Nigerian academia of the 1980s and 1990s, where the study of creative and performing arts was not only dominated by theater arts, but was also domiciled in theater arts departments. Professor Ekwuazi was one of the trailblazers who, though they were operating from within the theater arts milieu, began to chart the path for film studies within the Nigerian universities. He was among those who midwifed and have continued to outline the development of a separate template and curriculum for film and film studies in Nigerian universities, mapping out the theories and practices that have come to define the field. One wouldn't be exaggerating then to say that generations of scholars of Nigerian cinema owe a lot to Professor Ekwuazi's scholarship and breakthrough in the field. It is difficult to study African film and Nollywood today, therefore, without encountering his work, because he has published extensively on film theory and criticism, film and literary adaptations, use of film in research, film production, documentary film, the political economy of Nollywood, and the screen cultures of the three major facets of Nigerian cinema: Yoruba theater and movies, Igbo films, and Hausa cinema. His contributions to film scholarship in Nigeria and Africa is most evident in his pioneering work, Film in Nigeria, first published in 1987. Now, Film in Nigeria occupies the same space with other field-defining books of its period and the succeeding decade by African film scholars. Books like Third Cinema in the Third World by Teshomi Gabriel, published in 1982. The Cinema in Nigeria, published by Francois Balogun in 1984. African Cinema, Politics and Culture, published by Manthia Dayawari in 1992. And Nwachukwu Frank Okadike's Black African Cinema, published in 1994. Beyond its insightful and contextual analysis of film production and consumption in Nigeria, as well as its provision of rich historical information on the Nigerian cinema from colonial times, the groundbreaking book, that is Film in Nigeria, launched new areas of scholarship in the study of visual culture in Nigeria. The unassailable pedestal that the book occupies in the Nigerian cinematic discourse is confirmed in the latest reissue of the book in 2018 with an introduction by Professor Onokome Okome, who writes, quote, "All current attempts to engage with film scholarship in Nigeria must by necessity begin with this book. It injects into the debate about the study of film an uncommon theoretical thickness, a kind which was not there before the publication," end of quote. I believe that our discussions here today equally provide us a way of looking at Nollywood studies by analyzing parts of the scholarship that formed its foundation and framework, and this is coming from Professor Ekwuazi's work. It is instructive, given that this conference, LSA conference, is talking about decolonization. It is instructive that as far back as 1991, Ekwuazi engaged the question of decolonizing African cinema. His essay toward the colonization of the African cinema articulated the inherent and defining features of African film. But it was also prescient in the way that it prefigured Nollywood's counterbalancing of cultural hegemony in the essay's critique of the dominance of Hollywood and Bollywood films in Nigeria then. With his ongoing research and writings, as he highlights its improvements, critiques the oversights that Nollywood carries or demonstrates or displays rather. In a recent paper, which he titled Nollywood, The Making of a Digital Dark Age, which he presented at a forum of the cultural entrepreneurship and digital transformation in Africa and Asia, Professor Ekwuazi posits that film industries develop in direct proportion to the extent that they establish a synergy among production, distribution, exhibition, and archiving. So he argues that Nollywood has not been able to maintain that synergy. And as a result, in the absence of digital archiving practices, Nollywood is creating a digital dark age. Now, Professor Ekwuazi has dedicated his scholarship to shining a bright light of erudition and enlightenment on the possible darkness that might becloud the radiance of African film and of Nollywood at the same time. Professor Ekwuazi, I've not met you in person yet. I'm looking forward to doing that. But for all your contributions to pioneering, not only film studies in Nigeria, but also to creating the infrastructure for the education and pedagogy of film studies in Nigeria, I say thank you. And I join the myriad of your students and mentees, or everyone who has encountered you so far in celebrating you to to add my own voice to that celebration to say thank you again. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chijioke. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. We will now take the question and answer session, but I need us to be very brief as we ask the questions or make the comments.
I still have.
Because I have, oh yeah, okay, so we still need to take one more response from Segun. Segun, can you take the 10 minutes now?
Yeah, thank you. All right, if you all can hear me now. So I titled this talk, 1,000 Muso to a Big Masquerade. Today, we honor an outstanding scholar, teacher, and mentor, one I refer to as the big masquerade of Nigerian media studies. I deploy the term masquerade as a metaphor that serves two purposes in my talk. First, the masquerade metaphor denotes the presence of a human carrier underneath a costume, regalia. And second, it alludes to the aesthetically scene of the beautiful regalia of an elderly egungun, that is Ekwuazi. In both ways, the masquerade metaphor signifies a specific agency of an embodied personality and strikes at the core of aesthetic formulation and ethicality. In the first instance, the scene is the costume, whereas the unseen is the human actor tucked away underneath the regalia of the masquerade. The graceful movement of the masquerade and its entertaining and liturgical activities all rest on the actions of the areku, the mask carrier. Even when the audience is aware that a human actor is responsible for the masquerade's action, they never bother to scrutinize the carrier's identity. Instead, they focus on the outward performance of the masquerade while cherishing its gait, balance, and acrobatic display. What is the connection here? For me, the connection retraces the specifics of Professor Ekwuazi's scholarship as a pioneer scholar of Nollywood scholarship, whose contribution to the development and growth of media studies in Nigeria deserves more credit than it has received. For example, in today's academic parlance, only a few Nollywood scholars can recount the efforts of Professor Ekwuazi. So, if academia converts chieftaincy titles, I want to say Professor Ekwuazi will have been crowned the Are Ameleimo, that is the generalissimo of knowledge of the Nigerian cinematic tradition. Still using the masquerade metaphor, Professor Ekwuazi is the real Areku, that is the Osha, the deity that paved the way for the thriving Nollywood scholarship we all embrace and participate in today. His 1987 book, Film in Nigeria, trailblazed the path for other Nollywood scholarship to flourish. Thank you, Professor, for the audacity to dare and the nerve to write about a Bole Kaja film tradition that lacked distinctive cinematic features in its heydays. To this laudable contribution, Professor Onokome Okome, 1997, writes that Professor Ekwuazi is the dean, and I quote, the dean of Nigerian film scholars. To Okome, Professor Ekwuazi's end of quote. To Professor Okome, Ekwuazi's role in developing Nollywood and media scholarship in Nigeria is legendary and worthy of his own court following. Like the beautiful tapestry of masquerade regalia adorned with colorful lapels, the 10-chapter book laid the foundation for Nollywood scholarship in the sense that they cohere to provide critical, historical, and social information on the politics of filmmaking, audience reception of cinema, and the various production dynamics impinging on Nigerian cinema since colonial times. As a canonical text, the value of film in Nigeria lies in establishing critical rubrics and media indices for analyzing and appreciating local context of filmmaking in Nigeria, especially its ability to think through the possibility of a global Nollywood. While I have not personally worked with Professor Ekwuazi, I encountered him through his work as a master's student in the Department of Linguistics and African Languages, University of Ibadan. My supervisor then, Professor Duru Adeleke, scolded me for writing on mythology and Nigerian films without citing Professor Ekwuazi. He asked me to study film in Nigeria to establish a strong thesis for my graduate-long essay, and I was glad I did. This address is a short one. So in conclusion, I celebrate Professor Ekwuazi as a scholar, mentor, literary creative, and canonical figure worthy of academic emulation. Beyond the politics of academic ratings and canon confinement, The history of Nollywood scholarship and media studies in Nigeria is incomplete without a mention of your laudable contributions. And to that, I say 3 musos. Muso, muso, muso. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very good.
Thank
you very much.
Yeah, thank you. So we have 30 minutes left for this session. And as always, it would be nice to hear from Professor Ekwuazi himself. So we will take 20 minutes of the question and answer session and give 10 minutes to the Are, who will then, the Are, or the Dean of African Cinema Film Studies, to give us his own take on this matter. And I'm sure he's going to do that well. I feel comfortable doing this, and just as an aside, I feel comfortable doing this because it was Professor Ekwuazi who reminded me once, when I was playfully in the spirit of legendary Harry Garuba, and I said to him, when I finish writing this, my dissertation on film, there will be nothing left to write. And then he took one look at me and said, get the hell out of here. So, and that's the kind of person that we're dealing with here. You know, somebody who will certainly take you for what you are and then help you see your way through life. And I'm so grateful that when he reminded me that I was his first PhD student, I was delighted. I was really, really delighted because that spoke a lot to me. And what we got from him and the other people like Harry Garuba at the University of Ibadan at that time, we took with us to other universities in the country. The results may not be all good as it was in Ibadan, but it was something that full of humanity, the kind of humanity we took from his example, the kind of humanity we took from the example of Harry Garuba, the kind of humanity we took from Ibadan at that time. I'm not so sure it's still there, but it is something that I can never forget. It is something that I want to keep forever in my heart until the worms start eating me up at some point. I'd like to then ask you to make your contribution now or to make your comments. And please just be very, very clear and succinct about your comments so that we can have as many as possible, because he may want to respond to some of these comments too. Thank you. You can just show your hands. You can go to the icon here and show your hands if you want to make any comments. Comments or questions. If you want to ask comments, if you want to make a comment or you want to ask a question. Or you may wish to go to the chat room and post your question there also.
I was unable to join the other panel, so I just wanted to say congratulations. Thank you for all that you've done for us, for me especially. Thank you for being such a great mentor, a father, a friend, someone we can always depend on. Thank you so much for all you've done. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any more comments or any more questions that you want to ask?
Okay, thank you very much. I would just like to make a few comments about Professor Ekwuazi. I met him once, and that was in 2017, where he was the lead trainer at a training in Lagos, Ikeja, precisely around it was called the GEM project, financed by DFID. We spoke at length, and I discovered that he was a very accessible person. He was friendly to everyone, even when we came from all over Nigeria. He had a good disposition and he was scholarly. That day, a lot of people referred to him as the first professor of film and broadcasting in Nigeria. And I think he received a lot of elevation from everyone and he commanded respect. In a one-on-one discussion, I spoke to him that I would love to enroll for a PhD program in film, and I asked if I would like to, if he would supervise me if I came to Ibadan, and he said, of course, if I come around and I indicate interest for him to supervise me, that he will do that. So, but somehow I couldn't make it to Ibadan. But in one of my researches, I remember I called him on the phone. He picked up, I introduced myself, and he gave me all the support and the explanations I needed, even though he might have forgotten them. And I really want to appreciate you for that. Also, I discovered that when I was reading Dr. Hyginus' dissertation, she referred to Professor Ekwuazi in one of her notes as our first film teacher. And I think that goes to say that he's really trained a lot of persons, especially when Professor Okobe too was just said that he became his first PhD student. I want to congratulate you, Prof, for your strength and leadership throughout the years in teaching film and broadcasting in Nigeria. And to show the relevance also of his work, I just presented a paper about 2 hours ago in decolonizing film and distribution practices in Nigeria. And I cited one of his views in the paper. It is a 1991 journal article, and I want to quote just a paragraph. I wrote, Ekwuazi 1991 observed that policy goals cannot be separated from power politics. He cited Hollywood's aesthetics in global film distribution economy, which is heavily backed by the American government policy. He added that, and I quote, a viable aesthetics of the cinema is rooted in economic control over cinema technology and cinema institutions. That is as far back as 1991, and it's still very relevant to you. So on this occasion, it's delighted to be part of this session and to say congratulations to you, sir, once again, for your contributions to film studies in Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much. Would like to call on Monteclair to make the comments, to make your comments. Can you come up there to make your comments? Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, we can hear you now, yeah.
Okay. All right, Prof, I'm really excited being here to celebrate you. Prof Okome just mentioned it was the first supervisee. I think I'm the current. Prof supervised me. I graduated from Pan Atlantic University just in 2021, and Prof supervised my work. He's a great man. He's a family man. He's down to earth. Many times Prof would leave my research and want to talk about me, my well-being, my family. So he wasn't just about doing the work. It was also about you being a better person, you being a whole person, you being fulfilled and living the best version of yourself. A father figure, a mentor. I'm excited about this conference celebrating him. Thank you so much for putting this together. Indeed, he's the big masquerade. He's many things and more. And I want to say that God will continue. I went to see him in his new posting now. He's the VC in a new university. I went to see him and I was so excited about that position, the honor, and even this just just really blows my heart away. I'm grateful that he's saying it in his life, get more out there and grow the economy and grow academia, you know, and also push this name and push the values beyond just the text, the values that Prof. Ekwuazi always stands for. Thank you so much for your humility. Thank you for blessing all of us and training us. Live long, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Beryl. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We still have time. We still have time for a couple more questions and comments. Yeah.
Okay.
Can you identify yourself?
My name is the chairman of ONA. I should call myself Professor's son, because I benefited a lot from him. I was my talent examiner for the master's and also for my PhD. And there's something I want to point out about him, because I had some difficulties that would have affected me psychologically. But my interaction with him and some things he said really helped me to carry through. There is an aspect of his life that maybe has not been mentioned. And that was that after his service with the government, when he came back to the university, there was this politics there. And they tried to frustrate it. For many years, professors they didn't want him to get it. We find that the majority of the students they supervised became professors before him. So that when he goes for a final examination, all the professors will be calling him sir, people will be wondering. So he just told me one anecdote where he went for such an examination, and the lady observed that all the other professors were calling him sir, and yet he was still a doctor. So when people asked him, just told her that he was not yet God's time. So that was the type of person he was so resigned and busy that eventually, they say when somebody holds a child thing up, the son will definitely get tired and bring it down. So they now gave him his professorship. And as God had, despite everything, despite every delay, he ended up becoming a beast. I'm sure that the people that tried to delay him all through didn't expect that. They wanted to make sure that maybe, they said that it would be the act of jealousy because of the position in themselves or whatever. But eventually, God still made him to reach the peak of his career. And it was such an encouragement to me. I'll say once again, thank you. My father, I've been very helpful, and I pray that God will continue to sustain you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Wona.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we can still take 2 or 3 more questions and answer questions and comments.
I'm not sure if this is the electric chair because
Prof, there's a digital hand. Professor Emeka Nwosu.
Oh, hold on a minute. Okay.
You can see him.
Okay. I can see that here though.
Well, you may want to ask him to speak. Okay, he's
okay. Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. For them, Dr. Emeka Nwosu from Dominican University. Well, first of all, I'm quite thrilled listening to the encomiums that is being given to my Vice Chancellor, Professor Ekwuazi. It's really, I wish most of the staff here could listen to this. It's really very, I'm proud that my Vice Chancellor has made such, such significant contribution to the film industry. So I just want to pay my own respects and tributes to him for this great contribution to the film industry, which, as we know, Nollywood happened to be the third, biggest world film industry in the world. So, and I guess this is partly due to the contributions of scholars like Professor Ekwuazi. So I'm happy to have him as my VC, and I thank the organizers for having this conference to recognize him for his great contribution. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Father. Thank you very much.
We'll take one more, and then we'll take the gentleman in blue.
Thank you. The man in blue, his name is Ian Thomaselli from South Africa, mentioned by Matthew Brown, who was an early career academic in my research center at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, and mentioned the same conference I talked about a little earlier. Matthew actually connected some further dots that I hadn't thought of at the time, then or now, in that it was that panel, it was a plenary panel, and it was one of the most unusual plenary panels in that conference ever, because instead of flying in the international, well-published, overpaid gurus to dominate this huge lecture theatre, in fact, that panel, under my wife's aegis, my wife being with Chair Thomaselli, the conference host, had invited youngsters like Matthew Naisha Monty from Zimbabwe, who was also with us, and some very young production lecturers from within South Africa to address the issue of the relationship between production value and audience satisfaction. And Hyginus was suggested to us, I can't remember by whom, it might have been Jonathan. Fortunately, we managed to bring in people from Kenya, Uganda, Nigeria, and one or two other places. And because South Africa was still getting into the global community of scholars, being reintegrated, we weren't really that aware of the key people in our own continent. The point was we wanted that panel to be people from the continent who made a contribution in the continent, and in the Journal of African Cinemas that we publish, and Matthew and Jonathan have been and are on the editorial board, the idea is to encourage resident African scholarship in relation to global scholarship about African film. And I think that we've been very successful in doing that. But the point was, the final point I want to make is that, yes, Matthew, I remember you being 12 years younger, 13 years younger. But what this session has brought home to me is the fact that I was not fully aware of the contribution and reputation and what Hyginus brought to our center and our university in that conference, being the giant that he is in Nigeria. And that speaks to the relative isolation of African research systems from each other within our own continent. And I found this particular conference a wonderful breakout from those silos. I mean, yesterday's keynote speaker by Femi was something that every South African scholar should be exposed to. I'm going to try and make sure that happens, because the discussions in this part of the world are far more mature and sophisticated, open-minded and dialectical than what was occurring in the southern tip, which would also include Zimbabwe, where we've lost the ability to apply our theories and methodologies to approach the future in democratic, inclusive, and open-ended ways. So I just wanted to make that point. And Hyginus, I know that when you visited us, that you wanted to talk to me more than I could make the time for. We had 800 delegates. You know, the buses weren't running. There weren't enough hotel rooms. The we just were totally overwhelmed. We're trying to organize that conference. I think the Lagos Studies Conference has a history of probably very well organized conferences and can draw on that previous experience. This is the first time we've done it, and it was extremely demanding. So thank you for your patience and waiting for the election.
Thanks,
Thank you very much,
thanks,
Tomaselli.
Professor Tomaselli.
Thank you so very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now we must now give there is a microphone to the Dean of and the Arena Campo of Media Studies, Professor Ekwuazi.
Yes, I cherish that title very much.
Yes,
because
yes.
you know, I'm in Ibadan, among the warriors here. Remember, the garrison commander. So thank you very much, Sheto, for that, Shegu, for that. Now the thing really is this: I'm grateful. You know, a talk like this is really, for me to say anything, is to appreciate everybody. To say I'm very much touched by the kind of tributes. If the first session also the same thing happened, and I want to thank everybody. You know, an occasion like this reminds me of something. There is this story and a doctor about a man who died, and at the funeral, so much was being said about him, and the wife who was sitting there now said to the son, "Look, go and check and see whether it's your father who is still in the coffin." You see, because the tributes, I mean, the woman couldn't see where all those tributes were coming from, because certainly to her, that was not the man she knew. You know, so I think these things are, I think that anecdote is simply to express the fact that, you see, too many things are said about you. And if you are there to hear it, or you are one of those who listen to that, you don't know what to make of it, but I'm really very, very grateful. For me, it's been a very great journey. You know, my first PhD supervision was a Okome. I didn't go through the horrors of that supervision for too many reasons. Here was a young man who didn't know whether he was going left or right. But you could tell he wanted to take out a PhD at all costs. And so we encountered each other. And I had supervised a particular work before that time, but you know the tradition in Ibadan, if you are a new PhD, or you've not attained a certain height, you are not given any supervision beyond the first and second degrees. So I had a co-supervisor who was my senior. So technically, Okome was the first one I started handling alone, you know. And the man stole all my books. I had just come back from the US. I had a lot of books. He never returned any book that he took. And that was the nature in those days. I had all the phone books and they had none. So my books kept going out. But then what they did was this. Each time any of them traveled out in subsequent years, they brought me a book. So it's like they are paying back for what they did. And Okome has continued paying. And there will be no end to his paying. But the thing again is this. That particular supervision launched me into greater works. That was a very distinguished, and you know, it's referential. I've supervised 20 PhDs. Only one was not in UI. That's the one in Pan Atlantic University. Beryl was here to talk. And each of those 20 universities actually has given me 20 different ways of looking at film scholarship. So I learned more than, I think the best way to learn is actually to teach. I learned more than I gave. I got more than I gave with those 20 PhD theses. You can see I'm deliberately not talking about the masters and the BAs. They also provided me with torchlights to my feet. They enabled me to see. But it was essentially with the PhDs that I was able to see properly. And those 20 PhDs, I'll forever be grateful that I worked with the scholars who produced those works. You see, by the time I decided to do the work in film, it was perhaps the wrongest time to start it, because there was absolutely nothing available. And I remember my friends asking me, why do you want to go this way? Couldn't you do something simpler and go on? But Harry Garuba, God rest his soul, who was my roommate, kept insisting, this was for the masters, kept saying, why don't you do it? And I couldn't get books. He was more instrumental to me locating some of the books I will use and everything. At times he gave me the wrong books anyway. But I'm trying to say that I have met great souls, great people, you know, in this area. I remember my meeting with Matthew here. He was much younger. I think we were all much younger at that time. And I remember he came into my office and said he was researching on Nigerian film. And we talked and did a very, when he mentioned it here, a very good paper he wrote and I put in the journal. And he was instrumental to my going to South Africa. And I remember discussing the paper with him. And even after the presentation in South Africa, he edited the journal. And I remember how many times we got through together talking. And I remember, Matthew, maybe you don't remember, one of the assessors for that work said not to publish. Yes. And I remember Matthew telling me that he had looked at the work and looked at the other assessments. And he felt that, wait a minute, this work should be published. You see, the point I'm trying to make about this is that every so often scholars are confronted by that kind of thing. Something gets thrown at you and you look at it and people are telling you something different and you take your own independent decision on what to do, you know? So if he hadn't been the kind of scholar he is, I think because the person who said that was from the social sciences, I remember, who had a different idea of how research should go, you know? I mention this because I've seen a lot of that too in my, me assessing people. I'm feeling, say, okay, that there must be something seminal in this work, you know, and there must be something that has justified the research tools or the methodology this person has employed. And you find down the road, you are right. But at that time you are taking the decision. It's just you and you alone deciding what to do. I'm sure Matthew has forgotten all about that, you know. So, like I said, I've encountered different people on this route, and Osakwe, I know the trajectory you are going. I know the work you are doing. You know, you remind me of Okume so much, you know. But the thing about the kinds of you is that you get shut up in the classroom all the time. Unlike the kinds of Marcel, who combine it with the politics of academia. You know, two different trajectories like that. Maybe I need to say this. Jonathan Hens has done so much. Okome here has done so much. And I remember at a particular conference in Abuja, I recall, I presented a keynote, I can't remember whether it's Santa or something. And Okome came all the way from Canada to attend. And I asked him to stand up in the conference. And I said, this is one PhD I supervised that I will forever be proud of. Do you remember Okome?
I do. And I also remember that you said that because I was so scatterbrained, that I'm likely to come late to my own funeral.
Yes. I've not changed my mind about that.
Yeah.
You can see that this panel started 5 minutes late because you are chairing.
But it wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault. So if I came to my funeral late, that's a good thing. At least I'm not dead.
At any rate, beautiful projects, beautiful ideas. And I remember Okome coming to me to do him I think he wanted to move to the US at that time from Canada. He asked me to do him a reference. I felt the same thing Matthew just said now. How can you come to me for reference? You've done more work than I did in Nollywood, let's be honest. You know? But I was very happy that I did that reference. I think they say only teachers and parents want their proteges to grow beyond them, you know, to be more than they have been. And I've seen that in the people I supervise their PhDs. They're all growing to be more than I am. And I'm very happy about that. And that's one of the things I give God gratitude for. film and linguistics. When Tolu and Shoeto, I think, coming from a background of linguistics, linguistics is not that far apart from film. It is not. In Russia, communication is in linguistics. That is where the domicile communication. And if you remember in Port Harcourt, that's what happened in Port Harcourt. Mass communication in Port Harcourt used to be in linguistics. So it doesn't really, there's a short connection. They are contiguous. You know? So it's really not interesting that both of you are from linguistics and you've gone into film. It's all too normal. You see, at the end of the day, it's called that these disciplines are not as far apart as we want to make them, and that the boundaries are always shifting and coming together. So I'm not surprised that you are here. But then, Chijioke, I'm fascinated by the kind of presentation you made, because that particular paper you quoted about the digital dark age, I'm surprised you traced it. It's a conference in Germany. I'm surprised you got it. And these other ones you mentioned, I think there's one particular work that Fifth scholars, I don't know, maybe because it was ACCE that published it and didn't give it the wide distance. I'm talking about the work by Mbejume, Dr. Mbejume. You see, Chijioke talked about Ola Balogun's wife. What's her name again? Françoise Balogun. She did her own at that time. Mbejume did his own at that time. And that was at the time film in Nigeria came out. These three works are at the same time, because the Film Corporation was planning to launch film in Nigeria. At the same, that was the time Francois' work, Cinema in Nigeria, came out. And shortly after that, Mbejume's film in Nigeria, I think that's still the same title, but it talks about problems and prospects. That was the same time it came out. It's a fascinating work I think scholars should look for and read, because it does define seriously the beginning of the industry. But it's a book that has not been given wide circulation. I don't know why. Unfortunately, Mbejume is dead. I remember I brought him to the Film Institute to teach. He headed the Film Institute after I left. But it's a work that I think should go with those three works. It should go with film in Nigeria. It should go with Francois' cinema in Nigeria. And then it should go, that particular work should go with it. It's a beautiful work. And I think that's just about that. I will want to thank everybody. Shoeton, I see you are at Penn State. I know I did a course there in film, in documentary film production. I came from Penn, University of Pennsylvania, to do that course. And yes, I did that course there. And it's good to see you here. It's good to know that you have ended up there, you know.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so
I've just been warned. I've just been warned that time is up.
Yeah.
Yes, and I know. So I'm trying to say thank you and thank you and thank you. And I'm happy that Dominican University was represented here by Father, the head of philosophy, Father Emeka. I'm happy he's here. I want to thank everybody who is here, to thank you very much. You are all part of my journey. God bless you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prof.
So it remains for me to thank all of you for coming, Matthew, Chijioke, Tolulokpe, everyone, including Shoeton, for coming, and Osakwe, and to say that maybe at some point we will do the second edition of Media Studies in Africa, celebrating yet again Professor Hyginus Ekwuazi. And as one of my friends told me one time, when I was asked to write a bio of myself for a book, and I said in the bio, I said, you know, so and so graduated from the University of Ibadan and was one of the students of Professor Ekwuazi, studied under Professor Ekwuazi, and said, why do you have to do that? And I said, because I want to do that. And he said, but this is not normal. I said, Friedrich Nietzsche too did that, and it's not normal. And he laughed. So I thank you all very much for coming, and hopefully I'll send you invitations for this particular edition of the meeting at some point. later in the year. Thank you. Thank you for all for coming.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you
much,
so
Prof.
much. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Right. Bye.